your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell at before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good thing to say, I dabbled in stand-up or something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are sold. Rumble, Rockfin, Twitter, Twitch, even. Did I say Facebook? I know. Facebook, it's not just for checking up on your high school friends to see how fat they've gotten, although that is what I mostly use Facebook for. Cool. The dog just came in. Hello, Muffin. We have a wonderful guest today. Before I bring him in, I'm going to remind you to please like and subscribe. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am at 98,000 and change, creeping closer to 100,000. I'm going to get that silver play button. I'm going to get it. I'm going to put it right here. Please and thank you. Today's guest is we're going to talk about his start at Breitbart, but mostly he's known for this incredible motivational song called Fighter, which has been playing at every single one of Trump's rallies, and it's very, very cool. We're going to play it for you in a little while, but before we do, we're going to bring him on and have a little chat. Welcome to the show, Jon Kahn, the guy behind the guy.
Hey, oh, did that show up? That's not supposed to show up. Hi, Chrissie. How are you?
I'm glad it wasn't something worse.
No, exactly. How are you?
Wow, where did you get a dark MAGA hat? I'm so jealous.
Well, I was fortunate enough to perform at a rally in Arizona. So by request, I asked if I could get a dark MAGA hat to perform, and they were agreeable to send me one.
You're like, look, I don't want any money. Just give me the hat.
Okay. All right, we can rate it. I might have it.
No, I would.
We'll see how the podcast goes, Chrissie.
Oh man, the stakes are high.
Yep.
We're gonna play the amazing song you wrote, which it brings everybody to tears who listens to it, who talks to you about it. Before we get into that, you used to work for Breitbart. Were you always a musician and also kind of working for Breitbart? Tell us a little bit about your origin story.
I'm still at Breitbart, actually. My origin story is kind of funky. I'm kind of everything you're not supposed to be a conservative. I grew up in LA. I went to Stanford undergrad. I went into the film business. I was a produced writer at Stanford and then went to film school, became a writer director, and taught myself how to play music pretty late in life, like around 25.
How do you teach yourself to play music? I can't even teach myself to put furniture together.
I always loved it. Well, I can't put furniture together either, but I just loved it so much. And I used to go, and dare I say it, to Bruce Springsteen concerts, who was honestly my biggest influence. And I still love his music despite his politics. And I just taught myself how to play. I just wanted to do it, kind of had a knack for singing, and ended up directing a movie called Girl, which is that poster in the background there. And it was music related, and I put a bunch of songs in that movie and had a good reaction. And so I did the film and music thing for a while and met Andrew Breitbart at a conservative speakeasy situation in LA, where it was this thing called FOA, started by Gary Sinise. And it was basically a fellowship. It was around 2008, I think, where anybody in the entertainment, business, writers, directors, actors, musicians, would get together and talk politics without fear of losing work.
And, wow, I can't believe that was ever a thing. It's definitely not now.
No, and so I went to a meeting or a lunch or whatever you want to call it, and cracked a joke at the lunch, and some guy in a McCain hat came over to me and said, "Hey, listen, I'm starting this new site called Big Hollywood. Do you want to write for it?" And I said, "No way am I going to write under my real name." And it was Andrew Breitbart. And he says, "You don't have to write under your real name. You can use a pen name. What do you want to write about?" I said, "Well, I think we should write something funny." He says, "Yeah, we need funny on our side." He says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, what if I date liberal women on purpose and write about it?" And he says,
And what year was this?
this was like 2008, I think, or 2009. It was just before the Obama election. And so I wrote a few of those, and they were all they were tongue in cheek. I mean, they were based on real dates, and I would do some research. I'd go to the University of Spiritual Psychology in Santa Monica and see what I could drum up for business there and stuff like that.
You just chum the waters. Yeah. Would you use dating sites at all?
No, I back then that wasn't really that big.
It wasn't. I was just thinking, like, I met my husband in 2014, and it wasn't really much of a thing then. I remember, like, I met him just before Tinder really got going. So,
Well, it's
wow.
good. Definitely fortunate for you.
Oh yeah, I was happy to miss all that.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were like, I'm gonna date liberal women, and so you met them mostly.
I just, I met them around, and just the kind of the rule of it was, I couldn't tell them I was conservative until halfway through the date, and then we just saw what happened at that point. But out of that came a song I wrote called American Heart, which this was just around the Tea Party movement, where Andrew, he said to me, he said, "Why don't you come play your song at a tea party?" I go, "What's a tea party?" He goes, I don't know. It was like the first one. And so we went to Quincy, Illinois, and Andrew spoke, and I wore a hat and sunglasses and used a fake name. And, then we went and had a couple of drinks, and it was an amazing experience. And that whole year we went from tea party to tea party to tea party, and I was incognito. And, and then came out of the conservative closet on the cover of the Wall Street Journal when they said they would only do the article if they got my real name, and if I told them the name of a liberal I was working with in Hollywood. And I told this story on the War Room the other day. Apparently I dropped the F-bomb, which you're not supposed to do on the War Room.
I've done it.
Have you done it? All right, well.
Oh, then on the War Room, I've done it. Yeah, I've done it on like many shows where you're not supposed to.
But we were doing that tea party circuit. That's where I'd met Steve Bannon, and so we had become friends. And I called him up, and he goes, "You got to do it. You have to do it." So at that time, I was working with a big Grammy award-winning producer named Walter Afanasieff, who's worked with Kelly Clarkson and Josh Groban and all these people. And I'd spent a year in that room. I was writing every lyric on the record, and listened to him call all Republicans racist and every name in the book. And I sat there and I nodded my head. And I thought, you know what? Here's this guy's cell phone number. It's time. Because I knew he would confirm the story. I knew he wouldn't have the self-discipline to say, you know what, John's a good guy. He's a good songwriter. I knew he would kind of explode and validate why I had to wear a hat and sunglasses. And he did.
Wow.
And I never wrote another song with him ever after that article came out.
So did he talk to you after the article came out?
He did. I saw him one time. It was really interesting, actually. I remember it very clearly. I was in his kitchen, and he was across the island, and he was looking at me, and I just remember his expression because we got along. He liked me, and he thought I was a good songwriter. And he looked at me, and he scrunched up his eyebrows, and I just saw this expression. He went, "But you're so smart and funny." And I remember thinking like it was a really monumental moment for me, because I went, man, they can't even fathom how somebody who they might respect in some way or another could possibly be on the other side. And that permeates a lot of Los Angeles, which is where I'm at.
It's arrogant. I'm in New York. I definitely know the feeling. I was basically canceled from the New York stand-up comedy scene after coming out it was like, there was multiple steps to it, but it was coming out as like a Trump voter. It was going to January 6th. It was just a few things. And then like every 6 months, I seemed to go viral for some like incredible transphobic joke or something like that. And then people chime in, like people that are not very busy, love to come out of the woodwork and be like, "Oh God, I knew her when." But that's really interesting. I feel like we have a kind of a lot in common there, because the last day job I had before I went full time with like comedy and YouTube, I was working for somebody that I'm like, have I talked about this fully yet? I was working for somebody very much like a high level entertainment industry, a classic like limousine liberal type, for 6 years. And when I first got the job, I was like, wow, I'm working in entertainment. This is so exciting. I thought it was my dream. I'm working in this like beautiful, nice building in New York City. It's just like the whole thing. I was having my Mary Tyler Moore moment, like, wow, I look just excited to get a badge, and even the elevators were impressive to me. And then like over the course of 6 years, I had my political awakening. And it wasn't until, and I think I did tell my boss I did stand up, but he's so arrogant and, like just into himself, right? I mean, not like I would expect anybody to really care what their assistant is up to, but he never really bothered to look into me until I started doing better and better, and it would make more and more news. And finally he was like boarding a plane to Hawaii for vacation, and it came across his feed that I was on the Megyn Kelly show, because she had me on. I was one of the first people she had on when she started her podcast, and I was talking about how January 6th was like so overblown by the media that it like wasn't a big deal. The pull quote that they used was, I was like talking about how January 6th was pretty chill, because I was on the side of the building that there wasn't all this chaos. It was just like families and pets. Like I took pictures with so many dogs in costumes that day. Like that's my big takeaway from January 6th, are the dogs and like people selling t-shirts and stuff. And the food. Gosh, no, the food could have been better. But so he like sees this article, and he's kind of dumb in the way that like it was part of my job as his executive assistant to not only check his email, but I would write many of his emails for him. And then he was very old, so he wanted to send them himself. So I'd write an email and then put it in his draft so that he could just push send, like so that he could be the one to send the email.
Right.
And so it's my job to read his email, so I can see that he's emailing our head of HR about, oh my God, she was on Megyn Kelly. She was at January 6th. He's like bitching to the HR guy, like, did she go on company time to do this? And sure enough, no, I took off the days, and he signed off on it. But it was this unveiling of like, oh my God, she's on the other side. Maybe he didn't know or care or bother, but the fact that I had like made news for something in entertainment and also was on the other side, like he could not handle it. And that happened in July, and I knew he wanted to fire me because of that. He's like, this is a liability. This is a horrible, Meanwhile, I'm not at all. I don't think I've ever mentioned exactly where I worked, who I worked for. I was very much keeping a separate life. And then finally he got to fire me because when they all like wanted to go back into the building for COVID, I wouldn't get vaccinated. So he probably was like, oh, great, we're going to get her out for this. And sure enough, I was fired, but they called it, you're being voluntarily resigned, right? And I couldn't get unemployment benefits, couldn't get health insurance.
Oh, man.
I'm like, this sure feels like I'm fired. But it was worth it because I knew I wanted to try to have a kid, and I just was like, I'm not going to mess with that. So it's, and I always wonder, like, kind of what he's up to, but it's the kind of arrogance of people on the left and right. He's a New York guy, you're from LA, California, so they're very similar, and they think of most of the country as a flyover state. They probably think of New Jersey as a flyover state.
Yeah, but they're not particular. I mean, they're not particularly tolerant, to say the least. And one thing I find in LA that's so interesting to me is that there's an assumption that they have that everybody thinks like them. And so they're very open about what they talk about, and they talk about their politics as if everybody listening is one of them. And I know a ton of conservatives in LA, and people are still afraid to talk out. They're sprayed. I mean, I've seen more MAGA hats in LA than I've seen this cycle. Has been pretty encouraging, but they're still very loud and very intolerant, and I think it keeps people quiet, and it's kind of a shame.
It is. I talked to a guy who I interned at Conan with when I was in college, and he ended up having just like a lot of failures in that industry, like bouncing around jobs, and he had the opposite experience. Like he right away started working as a PA for Conan, then worked for Ellen, writing for her for 10 years. And he is a conservative. And he was telling me like he was writing a monologue for her that involved actual facts about oh God, what was that? It's basically like Russiagate, right? The truth about Russiagate. And like he tried to put actual truth into these monologue jokes, and Ellen would just be like, no, or the writers, it was the head writers would say like, no, we don't at all want this in her monologue, and it would be factual. So, and he felt very much that he had to, like, people know that he's conservative, but he definitely can't make the type of jokes he wanted to make most of the time. It's got to be creatively so stifling, and I've always wondered how many people are just kind of keeping their head down and keeping quiet because they have to keep their jobs and they have families to support.
It's
and they're
very
just sort of-
it's very prevalent here. I know a lot of people in the film business that are very, very conservative, believe it with all their hearts, and the industry has changed since the DEI situation has permeated what kinds of scripts you can write, what movies you can make. All my screenwriter friends they can't write what they normally write that made them successful, because all the
Wow.
development people, the people that are making the movies, have all these quotas and whatnot that they need to fill. And if you don't fill those, they will not make your movie anymore, even if you're a very successful screenwriter, which is crazy.
When did it become so bad? Like, has it kind of always been like this?
I not creatively, I don't recall it. Like when I was in the film business, it wasn't like this at all. I mean, there was a bias toward conservatives, but when everything started to go woke, it started to permeate the studios and the executives and the music industry as well. And it started to affect the product. And that's where you start hearing, go woke, go broke. You see what's happened to Disney and all these studios that are putting out these woke movies that don't do well, because it's not where the American people are. It's where they're praying to different masters. They're not praying to the audience.
And these movies are kind of, I don't want to say they're subsidized, but it's almost like making them and putting out the message is more important than how many people ultimately go and see them.
Exactly right. I think that's what I mean by praying to higher masters. I think they're obligated to infuse it with those messages regardless of the results.
Yeah, which it's just so stifling. Like it's a completely backwards way of creating art, and that's so crazy. So have you noticed that overall kind of like less people wanting to work with you since coming out as a conservative, or has
Well,
it been
I
a bit
focus.
different?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've kind of, I've had one foot in the entertainment industry, and but I've spent most of the last 12 years at Breitbart. So when Andrew passed away, I had a conversation with Larry Soloff, who's the CEO, and Steve, who was with us at the time, and they said Andrew always wanted you to be part of this company, but because you were in entertainment, he didn't quite know how to make that happen. And I said, well, why don't I keep helping out? Let me just jump in and see what I can do. Just if you guys allow me to pursue my artistic stuff on the side, let's roll. And here I am 12, 13 years later. And
Wow.
so it's been, but I go to Nashville for weeks at a time. I can still do my Breitbart work from there, but Nashville's a little bit more open-minded than LA. Even if you're working with Democrats or whatnot, they're more open to a different point of view.
Have you heard from anybody that you used to work with, like since coming out, like oh gosh, I just didn't. Anybody kind of reach out to you that you used to work with all the time, or have you noticed people kind of like phased out of your life since coming out?
Strangely enough, like since this most recent song came out, and it's so closely associated with President Trump, what I found is the people that disassociate with you, they just do it quietly. Like good friends of mine that I've written more songs with than anybody I've ever written with in Nashville, going back 20 years, unfollow me on Instagram or unfollow me on stuff like that, which kind of, it stings a little bit, but what I have found on the other side of it is people sending me notes that I've known and worked with or played shows with along the years or throughout the years that I never knew were conservative that are sending me private notes going, you know what? I'm not quite ready to speak up, but I'm right there with you. And this is awesome. So to me, that overshadows the people that I lost, because if the people that I lost can't handle the fact that I have a certain political belief, and I don't need them in my life.
What do you think stops people from coming out? Is it just fear of losing their job?
I think so. That's the social pressure here. I remember this during the George Floyd stuff. There was a friend of mine who I know was very conservative, and she was a single mom, 3 kids, and she put up the black square on her social media. Remember that whole thing? And
oh yeah.
And I looked at it and I called her up. I said, "You sent me 4 Breitbart articles this week. Why you're putting the black square up?" She says, "You have no idea what will happen to me at school if I don't put it up with the other."
Oh,
moms.
you said she was a teacher?
No,
Or
like with the
okay.
other moms, the moms of this.
Oh wow.
And that's when it really occurred to me, like how the social pressure is equal to the professional pressure as well. So people are quiet about it. They're getting louder though.
Wow. That's, you're so right. I go to a gym in Mount Kisco, which is like in Westchester. It's like near Chappaqua. And I finally found 2 people that are also voting for Trump. And like, it was Halloween. And I joked to one of them, like, oh, because, people were encouraged to wear costumes to work out. And I was like, I should have worn my garbage bag with my MAGA hat. He was like, I was like, what?
Yeah,
Why are you
exactly.
afraid? What's going to happen?
Well, Halloween's safe because it's a Rorschach test, and if you wore MAGA gear or whatnot, people could think you're either supportive or working it. So Halloween's probably the safest one.
That's true. But then I think a lot of people be like, come on, did you really buy that MAGA hat for Halloween? Or
Exactly.
it looks like you've had that a while. That's like an OG red, like square top MAGA hat. Wow, that's so funny. It is. Their social pressure is really immense. Nobody wants to be ostracized from their friend group, and it's just the way that the liberals of today kind of look down their nose at anybody, and they don't know enough conservatives or Republicans. I think most people voting for Trump they're kind of old school Democrats, or really maybe more independent. He's attracting a lot of different kind of voters now, and you look at his what might be his cabinet of like Tulsi, Vivek, RFK. They're all very different and attract a different audience. So
I'll tell you one thing that really shows up is dating in LA.
Oh, right, because you were dating all those people.
Well, that was a long time ago, but I recently got out of a relationship, and I got out there again to start dating, and politics is not the sexiest thing to lead with, but you kind of have to do it now, because otherwise, if you don't know where somebody stands, they're ultimately, like, I'll tell you a story that you won't believe. So every first conversation I have, I said, listen, I got to be upfront with you. I lean to the right politically, but I'm open if you're open. Half of them are gone right there. So, and
They
it's
don't
funny.
even order an appetizer. They're not even like,
Well, no, I mean, they're gone before you even go out with them. They'll just,
oh, okay.
So one of them said, okay, you know what? I'm open to it. Why don't we meet up? So we sit down, and this happened all in the first 5 minutes. She says, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I said, well, I'm in the media. What kind of media? Right-leaning media. And she says, I'm not kidding, in the first 3 minutes, if you say Breitbart News, I'm going to get up and leave. And
wait, is Breitbart considered the most right-leaning? I don't
well,
know.
it's conservative, and it's pretty influential, and we were very vilified after 2016, and so I said to her, I said, well, you better get rolling, because that's where I work. And she ended up staying, and it was miserable, but
wow.
she's in the house. I'm just kidding.
No. You stayed with her? No.
She didn't make the cut, but it's
wow.
It's tricky. You just have to find, which is not easy to find, conservative people here, but it's
no. And I remember when I met my husband, I was still like coming out of my liberal brainwashing, because he voted for the Libertarian candidate in 2016. God, I can't remember his name. And I voted for Jill Stein because I was an idiot. And I remember asking him, like, we were like about to go to sleep one night, and I was like, okay, if you had to vote for Hillary or Trump, who would it be? And he ended up saying like Trump. And then I was like, I harumphed and like didn't talk to him for the rest of the night. And I'm like, I can't believe I used to be that person. And so it really was through my relationship with him that he kind of like helped to open my mind and just made me realize I was more right than I realized, and like more even libertarian on a few things. So I think these women are really doing themselves a disservice because they really could be converted. I think if somebody took the time, or if they were open to it, if they had an open mind, they would realize. I think especially in 2024, I think people are not as liberal as they think they are. It kind of like sounds good, especially when you work in entertainment, but
Mhm.
what's it doing for anybody?
I think if people actually sat down and had a conversation and were able to do it without their heads exploding, I think you're right. I think people are not as far apart as they think they are.
Yeah, but it's just kind of like it's part of the Hollywood cult.
Yep.
So then you have, I'm going to play this song because it's you did not write it specifically for Trump after he had his assassination attempt. You wrote it, you were inspired by basically all his court shenanigans in New York. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's the moment I got the idea, but I was reflecting on everything he had gone through to that point, from the impeachments to the fake news story, the lawfare, to the raid on Mar-a-Lago, and it was the New York case that really, I just sat there going, how much can he take?
Yeah. Wow, this song is amazing. Okay, I hope you don't mind singing through your own song, but here we go.
Have some water.
Up and down, counted out, smiling through the taste of blood in my own mouth. I got bruises and broken bones, but they don't know I ain't in this ring alone. I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. I was born to be a do or dyer, a make it rider. Don't throw that towel just yet. Don't cash in that last bet, 'cause I hit harder when I'm tired. I'm a fighter. I get back up. That's what I do. I didn't soldier on this far just to lose. So take your shot. Is that all you got? I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. I was born to be a do or dyer, a make it rider. Don't throw that towel just yet. Don't cash in that last bet, 'cause I hit harder when I'm tired. Yeah, I'm a fighter. Oh, no one can keep me down. They didn't know, but they know now. That I'm a fighter. No one can say that I'm a running hider. Don't cash in that last bet. Don't throw that towel just yet. I'm a fighter.
and I had us both muted. I was just saying, I've seen that. I've watched that video so many times and heard this song so many times, but like it still makes me tear up. It's like just I love the mix of his funny, like goofy little dance with the truly like inspiring shots of like behind him at the White House, and like because he's tall, like he's like this, like he's like 6 foot and change, right? And he's just but at the same time, you like forget like he's however, I forget how old he is all the time. He's just like he's really amazing. He's doing what 4 rallies today. I think he did 3 yesterday. Like even like a young person would have a hard time with that schedule, and he just runs on like McDonald's and fumes and dreams. He's inspiring.
Well, it was really important, you know, when I was putting the video together. You know, the obvious road would have been to go all those very heroic strength shots. And as I started to edit it, I realized that when you showed who he really was, the loving moments, you know, the warm moments, in addition to it, it had a lot of impact. And, you know, when I watched the final edit for the first time, I got teary-eyed. And I kind of knew I had something special here, because and I hope people get out there and vote tomorrow, because we kind of all owe it to him after what he's been through.
Do you wish that he had done the McDonald's and the truck driving thing before so that you could edit them in?
You know, a lot of people have asked me that. I mean, look, I mean, they would have been amazing in the video. But
I'm just throwing fries.
I mean, it would have been incredible, but he does so many events and he never stops at, like, he'd never stop editing. The thing, you have 20 different cuts because he never stops giving you amazing footage.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, do you know, how did Trump first hear this song? How did it get to him?
I don't know. You know, we put it up on Breitbart, and I put it up on Twitter, and it started to go viral on Twitter. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a bunch of text messages going, he put it on Instagram.
Wow.
And so he put it on his Instagram, he put it on Truth Social, and a lot of people in the conservative movement picked it up. You mentioned Megyn Kelly, and I think Don Jr. Retweeted. Like, it just, once you know when something goes viral, you don't know what the origin point is usually sometimes. But I was just grateful that it was embraced, because I really wanted to show at that time that the left had there was a lot of momentum on the left. She had just been coronated, and people were a little bit, it seemed like they were a little bit despondent. And in the way the mainstream media always paints him, I was like, this is not our guy. This is not the way we see our guy. And to be able to put something out there like this, where if even this much gives people an opportunity to go, hey, let me spread this around, this is the guy I'm voting for, and kind of go up against that gaslighting machine that is the establishment media, it's pretty rewarding.
And the way you made this music video, it's nice, because you think, I imagine like a left-wing person watching this going, oh, look, there's just him and a black person is at the and then you're like, no, there's so much footage. Like he cares about everybody. It's not just like his token like photo op with, you know, he loves everyone. And I hate that is something the left has just spun out.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I kept waiting for the left to hit it, and they didn't. And then I started to think about that. I'm like, why aren't they coming after this? And I realized, I think the only thing I can think of is they didn't want more eyeballs on it.
Yeah.
Because it paints him in such what I hope to be a positive and beautiful light, that if they bring attention to it, just more people are going to see what kind of guy he really is.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, how quickly did they gloss over the assassination attempts, plural.
Right.
So,
right. Exactly.
And they're even with a straight face saying, oh, he's so divisive in his rhetoric. It's like, you've been calling him a Nazi since 2015. You've been calling him a Nazi. All the most horrible names. Literally everything is such projection. It really amazes me.
But don't forget, they're unifiers, though. Don't forget that.
Oh, right. And there's so much joy, and you have to unburden what has been done, whatever that means. So how did this song get to be played at all his rallies? When did that start happening?
Well, I don't really know how that happened either. All of a sudden, it was the same kind of thing. People started, texting me going, he's playing it at the rallies, and then they were in touch with me to play one where I sang it live in Arizona, which was an amazingly special day, because that when they asked me to play Arizona, I looked at the date, and it was a year to the day that I lost my mom. On the same day that I lost my mom a year ago. And what was so cool about that is that my mom passed away at 93 and was in love with Trump. The biggest Trump supporter you could ever find. And, and a big fan of my music, like any good mother would be. Why aren't you playing, this? Why don't you have this here and this and that? And so to stand on the stage and play a Trump rally on that anniversary was really amazingly special for me.
That is really cool. She probably had a hand in that. Sounds like it.
I kind of feel like she was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is super chat. This is irrelevant, Chris Thompson. Justice for Peanut. Where were you yesterday when we were talking about? He's referring to the squirrel. The squirrel from New York that was euthanized along with the raccoon.
A terrible story.
It's so horrible. I want to visit the farm, but I think it might be too far away. But I'm going to try to interview the guy anyway.
Mm.
Yes, Erica has a point. They finally figured out the Streisand effect. Yeah.
So these are live commenters coming in, huh?
Oh yeah, these are live people.
Okay,
these are
I like people.
Crisis actors. No, these are all real people. Let's see. Yes, from Filthy. I really love the color of the Fender Strat. I regret going black with mine, but I still love my baby. Filthy, I didn't even know that you had a guitar. But yeah, Filthy was also saying that he could hear.
You might be talking about this brown one.
Oh yeah. Is that an active guitar or just for show?
It's active. I'm not a great electric guitar player, but that was a gift.
Oh. And he could say he could hear the Bruce inspiration in your song.
Yeah, he was definitely my biggest musical influence for sure.
Oh, okay, cool. Did you get to meet Trump when you were there in Arizona?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I got to meet him briefly after the performance, and I had met him. Fortunately, I had a chance to meet him last year as well. And again, that was kind of part of my inspiration was because I've met him and I know what a warm person he is. Like I was struck by how warm and personable he was when I met him, and I got to spend a little bit of time with him. And I remember going to the airport on the way home, going, God, I kind of wish I could go back and hang with him. Like I mean, he's just a cool guy.
Where were you when you were hanging out with him?
We were doing a Breitbart interview, and I was there for that.
Were you nervous? Like, what did you guys talk about?
Well, I was just sort of facilitating the interview. I mean, it was a real interview, but I mean, he was just very personable and warm, and I just was struck by, it's just so opposite of the way people paint him in the establishment media, and it just really struck me.
Yeah, because they want to keep us in wars.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to do that. Chris Thompson again, under tornado warnings, just coming out of my hidey hole. Great song. Mag garbage for Trump. Thank you, Chris.
Rock on, Chris.
Where are you that you're having tornado warnings? Chris is another person with a guitar in his profile picture. Okay. A lot of guitar players. All right. I'm sorry. I didn't know you played guitar, Fieldy. Terrible friend. Okay. Wow. That's so interesting. And you also did a song after Andrew Breitbart died. You did it.
Yeah, we did a 10-year video tribute to Andrew Breitbart, where it was 10 years after he passed away, and everybody in the conservative movement sent us videos to be part of this tribute. And from President Trump to Marco Rubio, Megyn Kelly, Ben Shapiro, like everybody in the movement, because Andrew was such a pioneer in terms of showing us all how to fight back against the left. And I wanted to write a song for him. So I went to Nashville with a buddy of mine who's in the Hall of Fame, a guy named Jeffrey Steele, who's written a zillion #1 hits. He's one of the best songwriters I've ever seen. And I said, listen, I want to write a song for Andrew's tribute. Would you do it with me? He goes, come on out. And we sat in a room. He goes, tell me about him. And so I told him all these stories. And we just talked about Andrew. That's my computer's acting weird. You guys see?
Oh my God, is that the song? No, I'm kidding.
No, and he goes, do you have a title? I said, Andrew used to say, we got to walk toward the fire. And so he goes, I love it. And so we wrote the song called Walk Toward the Fire, and we put that as the main song for the video. And it really personifies the fun and the fight of Andrew Breitbart, for those who didn't know him. He was amazing. Really cool. One of a kind.
Wow, that's so neat. You've lived like such a cool, interesting life. Wow.
It took me a long time to understand my life, I think, because, you know, if you're in the arts and it sounds like you were in entertainment as well, it's up and down, and you get big highs and low lows. And it took me a long time to come to the conclusion that it's just a crazy story, and each new thing you get to do is just like a cool chapter. And
it really is. And there's no like baseline level of success. It's all like you're just working for every gig, and there's different levels. There's like being able to not need a day job level of success, and then there's like different levels of fame, and then there's, you know, creative ups and downs. There's so much to it that's not involved like if you're just a teacher or I always say dentist, but
right. You have to have a strong constitution too. I mean, there's an expression in Hollywood that they say in Hollywood you can die from encouragement.
Really?
Well, yeah, it's because like, and I remember, you know, I had times where I was like, I've got to get out of this. I've got to find something more stable. And I'd have one foot out the door, and then something amazing would happen and pull you back in. Then a few months later, like, I got to get out of here. And then something cool would happen. And I was, at one point, I just remember I was saying to my dad, I was like, I wish everybody would just tell me I sucked. And that way it would be an easy decision to get out. But every time you get out, you know, I've been lucky enough to have something kind of pull me back in. So I keep one foot in that door. For example, this song, you know, it only takes one song to break out, or one movie script, or, you know, one performance in your case, or whatever it is. You know, it can happen. That's what I do like about the arts, is that there's no rhyme or reason to it. And if you hit the right creative thing, the right tone at the right time, something can happen.
Yeah, it's true. You just like, you never know who's been in your DMs, or like either most famous person or most anyone you've been starstruck to hear from after the song came out.
Not really. I mean, mostly conservative. I mean, I've kind of known a lot of the conservatives, you know, the high profile conservatives for a while. Scott Stapp from Creed is my first big music thing was in 2000 something, where Scott Stapp from Creed, it was at the height of their success, heard my CD and flew me to Florida and said, dude, you're going to be a rock star. And I was about to direct a movie in Canada, and I was like, wow, you know what, maybe I'll drop out of this movie and be a rock star. And
he was like, yes, come join Creed. And you're like,
yeah, well, I ended up opening for them at Staples Center, which was an amazing night. But we're back in touch, and, you know, he's throwing some comments on a lot of my posts, and he's a great American as well.
Has he publicly supported Trump, or
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think he has. I haven't seen anything too political from Scott, but I know he's a very patriotic guy.
Yeah, I figure if someone's not verbally like out there for Harris, then they're probably just a Trump supporter. Well, like if someone's quiet, yeah.
I have another theory. You know, anybody who puts an American flag on social media in any way is probably one of us. Which is sad.
Isn't that sad? It's so sad.
Anytime I see a happy Veterans Day or happy 4th of July, I'm like, oh, they must be a conservative, which is really, really pathetic. But
yeah, happy Flag Day. Flag Day is also Trump's birthday. Yeah, isn't that sad? It's become like a polarizing thing, the American flag, and it's crazy. What's your prediction? I already voted. I voted on Sunday. And I remember I was in the little voting container, and I kept looking around for another woman to have meaningful eye contact with, but I couldn't. I couldn't meet anybody's gaze, so I guess I just voted for Trump.
Right. What's my prediction? Man, I'm cautiously optimistic. I know that's a safe answer. I think it's such a weird election this year, and I mean, I think it should be a landslide. I think it still could be, but
Yeah.
it could be very tight. So that's a very non-committal answer.
No, that's what they're saying, and I'm realizing. I was listening to something this morning that in the last election, there were 600,000 more registered Democrats in Pennsylvania than Republicans, and just in the last 4 years, they've made up. Now they've cut that number in half, so they've added 300,000 more registered Republicans just to Pennsylvania alone, and how it's really come down to like the men versus the women. Like women, I guess overwhelmingly, like maybe basically like 55% of voters are women, which I didn't realize. And Kamala has most women for some reason, but it's mostly the young, stupid women that are.
I don't actually think that's true. I've been looking at a lot of the numbers, and the early registration, early voting is really great for Republicans. It does depend on who turns out tomorrow. But I don't, you saw those Julia Roberts ads and the George Clooney ads encouraging spouses to lie to each other in order to vote for Trump, which to me is just so beyond the pale. But I think that cuts both ways, and they don't realize it. I think they think that, a woman's going to lie to her husband and vote for Kamala. But I think there's going to be a lot of women that are going to vote for Trump.
What commercial I would love to see is like a guy who is married to or dating like a Kamala voter, and he's pretending that he's gonna vote for Kamala, but then he gets eye contact with like dudes at the polling place, or he's just like somebody offers him a Bud Light and he's like no. Or just like I would like to see that commercial.
I think President Trump's comment at the Al Smith dinner just was one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. It's when he said he's not worried about, what did he say? Something about he's not worried about women not voting for him because their wives, the wives and their wives' lovers. What was it? White man. He wasn't worried, right? Remember that?
Their wives.
Or was it? He wasn't worried about white males for Harris because their wives and their wives' lovers are going to vote for him. I thought that was
right. Yeah, that was funny.
We'll hopefully know tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was on the fence about like, do I vote early? Do I vote the day of? And you just keep thinking about all the things that they could be scheming. But I'm like, all right, I'll vote with the other old people first thing Sunday morning, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. John, I know you got to run. This was so great. It was so great to talk to you and meet you. Tell the fine people where they can follow you. Any upcoming gigs? Any upcoming projects?
I've got a gig in LA on November 16th with Jeffrey Steele, who's the Nashville guy that I just told you about. That'll be at the Mint. You can find me on Instagram at Jon Kahn Music, no H in the John, and on Twitter, I think you've got that going on the Chiron there.
Oh yeah, let me add the Instagram. Tell me your Instagram again.
Jon Kahn Music, Jon.
Jon Kahn Music. Amazing. And yeah, if any of you guys want to come up, any discount code for the gig? No, I'm kidding. I say that all the time when I have shows.
I don't know. It's LA. Sometimes they make you pay to play. They're not doing that this time, but I wish they would give us a discount. Kind of.
Is there any advice you would impart to somebody who is maybe a little bit right leaning, and they're looking for they look to you and they're inspired by you, and they go, well, what's the path to success when you're out of the kind of like the Hollywood machine?
I think there's a lot of artists that have paved the way to show that you don't need mainstream radio, you don't need mainstream Hollywood to actually succeed. My friend Jeff Steele, who I keep talking about, he wrote a song with Aaron Lewis and Ira Dean called Am I the Only One?, which went to #1 on Billboard with no radio play, no label support. John Rich, same thing with a song called Progress. And then Jason Aldean's a huge star, but he had Try That in a Small Town, which radio wouldn't play. And it wasn't until the conservative movement got behind it that it went to number one. So there is an entire half of this country that values the same things that we value. And if you can infuse that into your work or your art without totally hanging a lantern on it, like, you know, you don't see Pink or Ariana Grande singing about redistribution of wealth. I think when you get into that, right, that kind of, I mean, you just need to write good music and maybe kind of subversively infuse some themes that we believe in, then I think a lot of people will embrace it. You just got to keep writing. That's what my buddies tell me. Just keep writing and writing and writing.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
That's true. Yes. Subtly planting seeds here and there. I think music is great for that. Comedy is great for that. That's how the arts are really powerful in that way. And there's a fly flying around. Great. Jon, thank you so much for coming on. It's great chatting with you. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Oh, one more super chat. Night Owl, you look so radiant. Also, any ideas yet for your 100,000K special? Gosh, I don't know. I should do some. Oh, I don't know.
I thought he was saying I was radiant.
Yes, of course, Jon. You look radiant too. It's the dark MAGA hat.
All right.
Everyone follow Jon on Instagram and on Twitter. Thank you for stopping by. Really, it's such an awesome, inspiring song.
Thank you.
And can't wait to see what's next from you.
All right. Thank you, Chrissie. I appreciate it. Thank you to your audience.
See you later, Jon.
All
Bye,
right.
guys. Bye.